Hello and welcome to the Slow Ready Podcast, a casual drive into the music and culture of Goose. I'm Mike.
And I'm Alex.
And it's great to be here with you all today. And we are going to quickly get into the second leg of Fall Tour here and break down these first few shows, one of which me and Alex were fortunate enough to go to. But first, we have a special thank you to pass out real quick.
Yeah, just want to say a long overdue thank you to Jeremiah Zimmer, the founder and owner of Hop Butcher for the World, a brewery in Chicago. He reached out to us a while ago to let us know he was a fan of the podcast, and he sent us some of his beers. I mean, how cool is that? So we're going to pop a few of these open and enjoy the episode together. And I mean, this features artwork from Dan Jetza, who did some of the artwork for one of the posters for the Salt Shed this year already. So pretty cool stuff. Really good beers I've had so far from them, and cool brewery. So want to crack them open?
Yeah, absolutely. Do it right here on camera. Cracking open the Mexican lager called Soar. All of them have been good so far, like Alex said. So yeah, gonna take a little bit of the edge from this Monday off while we get into these fun Goose shows.
Yeah, and I've got a Lord Galactopus here, Mosaic and Galaxy Hopped Double IPA. So maybe I'll get a little crunked on this episode.
Either way, we're going to be really excited to talk about Goose today. So
before we get into all that, though, just want to do a quick reminder on all our socials at Slow Ready Pod everywhere that you're on the socials. So let's get into it.
Yeah, so the band kicked off on Thursday in Nashville with the second leg getting started. So pivoting over to that, it started off with Echo of a Rose into Green River, and then finishing up the Echo of a Rose sandwich with a little bit of Echo there, ending it, and then going into Draconian Meter Maid, cover of Mas Que Nada, Time to Flee, transitioning into All I Need, which the transitions start getting crazy here, transition into Caution, transition into Time to Flee, and then finishing with Same Old Shenanigans to end out set one. And then set two went from So Ready, then Into the Mist, transitioning into Arcadia, Western Sun, which transitioned into Dripfield, and then a Mr. Action Encore. So a lot to get into here, Alex. What are the highlights for you? What jumps out at you? What do you want to discuss?
There's a lot to discuss with this. I mean, you start off with the sandwich. Echo is a great way to kick off a show. The Green River is a cover we've seen a lot over the years, but the transition was flawless, and that's kind of the name of the game of these shows so far, in my opinion, is just crazy, flawless transitions, and the band's really in sync right now. But going into the Draconian Meter Maid, that was my real highlight from this set one. I think this might be my favorite version of this yet. I mean, we got Peter doing Chariots of Fire during this thing, so he's really feeling the jam on this, and we go into this really kind of blissy jam space before getting into a more uplifting space that gets a little bit bluesy in a way, and then it just kind of takes a surprising pivot, and you think that you're going to get into like a dancier space, and it's just a transition into Mais Canada, which blew my mind. So they were having so much fun with that last minute and a half or so. I just really had a blast listening to that Draconian Meter Maid live and then listening back again to get ready for this episode.
Yeah, definitely. Draconian was a highlight for me as well. I really like this set one overall. It's very songy, I guess you would say, but they did do, even though some of these takes are a little bit on the shorter side, there were very interesting things, I think, throughout the set. You know, Draconian definitely being one of those. They're kind of just exploring new zones, and maybe they're capping out at 10 minutes, but lots of good stuff in there. SOS was amazing. I love it at the end of set one. And it was a really great Dawn as well, which, you know, that song just grew up and got its wings here recently. So really nice to see a strong Dawn there closing it out.
Well, before we get into set two, I mean, there's a few more notes on set one. Mas Canada got jammed out a little bit on this too, which was kind of nice. I mean, all it really needed was like Jeff to have some claves or like a guiro or something just to like add a little extra flair on top, but it was great. And then the other sandwich in this, which was interesting, was the Time to Flee sandwich, where we got like a Time to Flee into All I Need, into Caution, back into Time to Flee. And I was not expecting it to come back to Time to Flee, if I'm being honest. But we got some really short, compact versions and jams on all of these. They really wanted to get that Caution in there, you could tell. I'm not so sure that it was on the written set list for it to be a sandwich like this, but they absolutely crushed these transitions. And then SOS, of course, great way to end a set. My favorite way to end a set one, or at least I thought so until we got to the next show. But great stuff. And, you know, right after getting the news that Dawn is a song, we get a Dawn in the first show back. So Awesome stuff.
I will say just another note about Echo. I'm kind of torn on this one because on the one hand, I can't really think of a better way to start a show. Like that's a great mood to be in going in with Echo here right out of the gate. But at the same time, you're a little bit crushed because it's going to be a shorter Echo here starting off. So mixed feelings on that one, but very interesting set one for sure.
Yeah, definitely really interesting set one and very songy, like you said. That's kind of been the theme of this tour so far too. Very songy sets. So going into the set two though, So Ready opener and a little bit longer of one than we've seen in the recent past, I want to say. So I don't really care what anyone says. I love So Ready, love some funk, and something about that like samba style satellite jam gets me going. So I'm always game for a So Ready. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So Ready's always fun and funky, but this one had a little bit extra to your point. It definitely did. I loved all the like Spanish runs in there. And just like this start to set two is just it's a real powerhouse when you that's so ready. And then the Into the Mist is probably the linchpin of the whole show, probably the highlight for a lot of people as well. I'm on my fourth listen today in this Into the Mist, and it is seriously awesome. I don't know if it's better than Cap. I doubt it is, but it's still really amazing. They have this amazing 5-4-1 progression towards the end of it that I just think sounds fantastic. And when they drop into it for the final peak there at the end, it was just an amazing moment. So, and then you've got Dripfield kind of bookending the end of this. So, a lot of power in this set too.
We typically like to do our highlights, but I feel like for these shows, like I had notes on everything. Like it's just
Yeah.
it's been a great run of shows. So like you said, that Into the Mist, second longest version to date, the first longest being the Cap, of course. And you get that kind of great slow shuffle build going into the When the Saints Go Marching In interpolation, tease, whatever you want to call it, by Rick, which has kind of been a thing lately. But the thing that really sticks out to me on these Into the Mists lately is that Cotter is so good at doing like stuff on the toms where he's almost like melodic on the drums, which is just so unique to his style compared to what we've heard with Goose in the past. And then after that Saints interpolation, it just becomes a monster. It's just must listen Goose and definitely the highlight of the show.
Really good Arcadia too, though. That Dripfield has a lot going on as well. Just, from the point that they come back from the set break, this show is just gasoline. And I totally agree with you on your take with Cotter. He's, we go over it over and over again. He's such a great addition to this band, and he adds so much variety and melody and rhythmic feel to these things that they're able to take more patient approaches and end up in more interesting spots musically. So it's definitely evident on that Mist and throughout this whole set too.
Well, one note about Arcadia, I will say, and this is one of the longer versions we've gotten lately. I think since the Cap, if I'm remembering right, I don't have it pulled up, but 19 minutes long. And the jam, it was fun. It stuck to the main core theme and sound of Arcadia, the main verse, but it didn't really explore as much. And after we did that Moon Cabin episode a few episodes ago and saw the territory that Arcadia could explore, it doesn't really cover anything crazy compared to what we've gotten in the past for sure, but just really fun still to get a mid-set Arcadia. But part of me also kind of wished that those 6-7 minutes that were added on to the Arcadias that we've seen lately that are 11 or 12 minutes long went to Dripfield or to jam out Western Sun a little bit. And then, we kind of got compact versions of Western Sun and Dripfield to close out the set. And then we got to Encore Break and Mr. Action to close the show. Awesome. Love Mr. Action. But part of me wonders if the show would have been better served with no encore with the strict curfew there and let some of these other big monster songs breathe a little bit.
Yeah, that's a valid take. I definitely agree on the Arcadia. Kind of, I mean, on the one hand, you can't really complain because you're getting extra time with a very fun song. So, love it from that aspect. But at the same time, it didn't really go anywhere new. So you wonder if maybe we could have shaved a few minutes there to get like an epic drip field like we did in LA, or, maybe there would have been some other parts of the show that could have been beefed up or made better or served better if we maybe take a couple of the aimless minutes off of Arcadia. Although, I'm going to keep coming back to Arcadia is a really fun song, so I'm not ever going to really complain when Goose wants to stretch it out, even if, we could maybe take it to some other spots.
No, yeah, definitely not. No complaining here. It was just one of those things where Into the Mist, they were vibing with it so hard it went long, and then they wanted to get everything they had on their set list clearly knocked out as much as they could. So just kind of crunched everything down to where in retrospect, it's like, oh man, that drip field's going places. Oh, Western Sun's been jammed out lately. We didn't get a jam. Like, it's just one of those things where it's just, you look at the set and you're like, oh, what could have been with more time? That's all.
And I will say, we're about to get into them here. Maybe this is a little bit unfortunate, just tour planning wise for Nashville, but Nashville was supposed to be leading into, obviously a weekend in Nashville. So it would have been kind of like business as usual. But unfortunately for Nashville, it had to go up against benefit dates, which were replacing the Asheville dates. So obviously, as we're about to get into, those benefit shows were both incredibly special. So this is no shade, at least for me. I'm throwing it at Nashville. I think this show is absolutely fantastic, start to finish. But the weekend was maybe even a little bit crazier.
Oh, yeah. So you want to get into Winston-Salem then? Quick trip next day to Winston-Salem, and let's dive into the day.
Yeah, so we were blessed enough to be invited to the event that Drifter Merch was putting on at the Fiddle and Fish Brewery before the show. So that afternoon, we were gathered with a lot of vendors from the community. Chance to get to know some of you all, get to meet people from the Goose community. And it was just an amazing day. We talked to so many amazing people. I truly actually lost count. But yeah, it was an amazing event. I think everyone had the best time. They had a great live band there. The beers at Fiddle and Fish were amazing. So yeah, it was an amazing event.
Definitely. It was such a good time. Got to hand out a bunch of stickers and meet a lot of new faces. And looks like Drifter Merch and Honey Creek Pottery and Fiddle and Fish all got to raise a good amount of money for the Mana Food Bank. So that's terrific. They had a raffle going on, and it was a really cool shakedown. Like, tons of vendors, great food, great music, just a good time. And thank you to everyone again who said hello and grabbed a sticker and chatted with us for a few minutes. It was so much fun. The time flew by, and before we knew it, it was time to get to the show. So shout out to you all for making it such a great time.
Yeah, definitely. And shout out about Half Past Dead for my amazing Redbird shirt. It's like my favorite venue tee that I've ever gotten. So yeah, total success. Loved being a part of that. It was so cool to meet all of you.
Yeah, but from there we went right to the show. About 6:30, we hopped in our cars after the shakedown and got to the venue. Got to sit with our friends in the 100s level. Had a great view, and before we knew it, the show got started. So what do we think of this start to the show, Mike? You want to read off the set?
Yeah, so it starts off with Hot Love and the Lazy Poet, which I'll speak for me. It's my favorite opener. I think it might be yours too, but we'll see here in a second when you talk about it. Turbulence and the Night Rays was number 2, and then into California Magic, Silver Rising, Bob Don, and then the main event, Redbird Hunger Site, to finish out set 1, which we'll get into more detail here in just a moment. And then set 2 kicked off with Yeti, transitioning into Pumped Up Kicks, back into the end of our Yeti sandwich, and then a great long arrow. And then maybe the most special highlight of the moment of the evening, we had Cold Rain and Snow and Broke Down Palace. So obviously both Grateful Dead. We neglected to mention this here before, but the day of the show, there was news that Phil Lesh passed away, which obviously, if you like jam bands like me and Alex do, and assuming you're listening to this podcast, you obviously do, Phil Lesh probably meant a lot to you like he does to us. So it was absolutely one of the highlights of my life. I don't even feel like I'm overstating anything to see Goose play Broke Down Palace that night. Unbelievable. And then just to quickly wrap this up, we had Empress of Organos, Moby, back to Empress, and then encore was Tumble and Turn On Your Love Light. So this is the greatest Goose show I've ever been to. What do you think about it, Alex?
Yeah, it's my favorite show I've been to, and I'm glad that we got to share it together. Hot Love, I'll say it's my favorite opener of 2024. We'll put it that way. There's just so many good openers over the years that, it's hard to it's hard to box myself in a corner like that. But yeah, there was a stretch there at the beginning, and don't get me wrong, it's not like a bad thing, but it was like 4 songs in a row: Hot Love, Turbulence, California Magic, Silver Rising, where I was just thinking like, okay, like they're gonna push these jams towards the back of the show. I thought maybe up front, hearing the Phil Lesh news, we might get some kind of Dead tribute early on, but that kind of made it clear that we were getting jams in the back half of the show. And you love to see these Matt Campbell songs come up, especially early like this. And then Silver Risings was where the jamming really kind of started a little bit. Rick ripped like extra hard on this Silver Rising, I feel like, and then we get into a Bob Don with both of our first time seeing it. We saw it together, and so big hugs all around. We talk a lot about how like This Old Sea is such an emotional song, but I feel like the solo on Bob Don is so emotional, like so palpable.
Our entire group was very hyped about getting Bob Don. I think it's in a lot of our group's top 10. So that was a huge moment. A lot of joy in that section right then.
Yeah, but you mentioned it up front. The real star of the show was this final 2-song run in set 1, Redbird into Hunger Site. So I want to hear your thoughts after reflecting a few days.
Yeah, so I don't know. With the show this loaded, I was about to say these are my 2 highlights from the show, but I don't even know that I can honestly say that because there's just so much to get to here. I definitely think that they're probably the 2 best jams of the night, and they're both different. So I think, depending on what you're looking for in a jam, Redbird is great because it's kind of more exploratory. I feel like they touch on different textures, go to different areas that maybe they haven't visited before. So Redbird probably is going to do better as far as re-listenability, and finding more nuggets as you listen to it more and more. It was also very noteworthy that Rick was definitely having tech issues during Redbird. Someone came out on stage to try and help with that. And it
Twice.
actually Twice, yeah. It took a while to get that sorted out, but in the moment, the only thing I could think about was I just started to latch on to what Peter and Trevor were doing, along with Cotter and Jeff as well. And it's just, so obvious how great of a band they are, because even with Rick, you could hear him, but it was so low in the mix that like it was barely audible. While he was struggling through that, Peter and Trevor were just like, don't worry, we've got this locked down. And they just kept the groove moving. They were still like actually toying with it a little bit and doing some nuanced things with it, regardless of Rick being kind of out of the picture there for a couple minutes. So it was just so impressive by the band putting on that show with all of that going on. They're just so in fucking sync right now. And then that Hunger Site, probably less exploratory than the Redbird, but I honestly enjoyed it more because I don't think I've ever had more of an adrenaline rush in my bloodstream than I did during the last 5 minutes of that Hunger Site. Like, good Lord. I mean, I hate to say you had to be there, but like if you listen to the sections around us during that finale of Hunger Site, I mean, I haven't heard screams and squeals and oh yeahs like that at that level since I started listening to Goose. So I wonder if I'll ever see a better finish to set 1 than I did that night. So I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, interesting note before I kind of dive in is this was the first time we've seen Redbird and Hunger Site in a set 1 that wasn't like a 1 set or like a festival set since last year. So pretty cool, like to get them back to back like this. They've been liking that transition a little bit lately. I think they did this in Carnation as well, but just awesome stuff. You mentioned the tech issues with Rick. That didn't come through as much on the soundboards or even on the video feed I watched back after, but in person, like Rick was pretty much inaudible during a good stretch of this Redbird. So shout out to Peter and Trev carrying this jam here, and it got into a really great kind of blissy space there for a while. But once that crew got off stage and Rick was starting to feel it, he was doing like these lightning fast runs up and down the fretboard, fully in sync with Cotter, and they were doing this cool like 5-shot rhythm. I don't even know how to musically describe it, but they're just kind of like doing this triplet feel kind of sound, but it's 16th notes and doing 5 shots, and that was the transition jam into Hunger Site. But just such a sweet 3 to 4 minute run there that led into this monster of a Hunger Site, which if you turn this on after the main verses and stuff of Hunger Site were over, you might think you were listening to Madhuvan or something, because it was heavy. Like the darkness got into Rick for like a few measures there, and then it was just power chord city. Like they were ripping, and the electricity in the room was insane. Like you said, everyone was looking at each other like, what is happening? And looking around the room, it was like, I've never seen that much energy at a Goose show before. Such a chunky, hard rock, fiery ending, and it was over before you knew it. Again, a shorter Hunger Site than we've seen in the past sometimes, but one of the best of the year by far. I mean, I don't think I've seen a better one myself. So awesome way to end a set 1. Like I said, I thought SOS was my favorite way to end a set 1 until I saw this Winston-Salem show, and holy shit, that was a Hunger Site.
Yeah, I think just like I'll piggyback off that just a little bit and then I'll leave it at this. But I was trying to describe it to another friend the other day that wasn't at the show. And I was like, I mean, I don't know that they've ever played that furious when I've been there, or at least in the last couple of years that I've been listening to pretty much every show. And it was like, I was trying to describe it. I was like, it's like a train going off the tracks. The conductor is dead. And oh, yeah, the train is on fire. Like, I mean, it was just manic, like minute 11 to minute 16, just absolutely bananas. So I don't know that it's like more accomplished or covers as interesting of ground as like say like the SPAC Hunger Site. That may be, as far as like re-listenability, that one may rank higher. It probably does. But if you just want like a kick in the ass, this Hunger Site is the one to do it.
Yeah, they're just completely different feels. Like this reminds me a lot of the Home Del Madhuvan, actually, which I was also at, funny enough. Just maybe it's not everyone's favorite version of it, but for the people who want like heavy goose, like this is the version of the year. Just like this is the Hunger Site of the year for my taste. Same thing with that Madhuvan from Home Del, just headbanging, got the horns up, heavy rock. Let's go. But then we get into the set too, where they just don't let up, right? Like, got the Yeti sandwich. Amazing call as an opener after that Hunger Site. You keep the energy up, but with a completely different feel. And they've been loving this sandwich with pumped up kicks lately. And while some people might say they want to hear Yeti explored because it's been doing so awesome lately in the jams that we've gotten from Yeti, like this is such a cool transition and such a crowd pleaser. Like, why not let them keep doing it for a while until, they'll probably forget about this and not play pumped up kicks for like 2 years after they stop playing it. So let's just enjoy it in the moment.
Yeah, I thought that the Yeti, I mean, yeah, I get, if you go to a lot of Goose shows, you may be sick of it by now. That's fine. It's totally valid. But I really think like as a total package, Yeti, pumped up Yeti is just it's just a fun section of the show. And if you're going to put it at the beginning of set two, I kind of think that's where it needs to go. Cause like to your point, it keeps the energy up. Everyone in the crowd was pretty much singing the lyrics to Pumped Up Kicks when that section was going. So, I mean, the whole crowd was loving it. So there may be some that have soured on it, but I thought it was one of the more fun points of the show. And then, transitioning from there, you get a massive arrow. I don't know if it's in like my top 2 or 3 arrows from this year. Probably not, but it's still a really solid, I think like a 19-minute arrow, if that's, check me on my math there, but it was really solid. I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, it was more of a vehicle into this Phil Lesh tribute we were going to get. But coming out of the main portion of Arrow, there was some cool stuff still to dissect here. Like Rick was rocking the looper pedal and he was doing some stuff with like a reverse delay thing going on. And that really piqued my ear because I'm not used to hearing that all the time from Goose. And Cotter was doing kind of like this like break beat, like quick paced, like snare and hi-hat. And Trevor was turned all the way up, baby. Like, love some Trevor Goose. So it didn't necessarily explore any groundbreaking territory, but it was like the perfect vehicle to get us right into this Phil Lesh tribute, which probably in reality the highlight of the show just because it was so emotional after the news of the day and the heartbreak of hearing Phil Lesh had passed away. But we get right into this Cold Rain and Snow, which unexpected. I'm not sure if we can say this with 100% certainty, but based on all the data we have, the biggest bust out this band has ever done. First time played in almost 10 years. Everyone understood the assignment here. Super emotional from the band. Getty had the red and blue lights up during the song and just a beautiful, beautiful tribute. So the room kind of was realizing what was going on, what song it was at different points. But, the true deadheads were erupting early on. And then everyone was like, oh, yeah, Cold Rain and Snow, cool. And it's just like you got to kind of see the rest of the room experience the realization that this was going to be the Phil Lesh tribute. And it was starting off with a song that hadn't been played in 10 years by Goose. Just amazing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you could, by the time we got to the second Cold Rain and Snow chorus, the whole arena was singing. So, I mean, it was pretty deafening by that point. And then Broke Down Palace was played more recently, but like if you're trying to think of something that's like more fitting or more appropriate for, what happened that day, I don't think you can find a better song for that. And then, getting them both back to back, to your point, it was just a very emotional moment. Like I think, the first minute and a half of Broke Down Palace, I don't think I sang. I don't think I moved. I don't think my mouth opened. I think I was just staring in awe as to like, no, we're really doing this right now. So it was very meaningful and very, very emotional. And backing up just even slightly to what you were saying about the arrow, like, yeah, it's not like maybe as exploratory as some of the other ones, but I think that's like what's so cool about the place Goose is in right now is even when they're not like taking like huge chances on songs, they're at least modulating it a little bit and you're getting small interesting differences, and it funny enough, reminds me of my favorite Phil Lesh quote where he says, I've never played the same thing twice. Matter of fact, I've never played the same thing once. And I think that's very applicable to how Goose is going right now. Even if someone wants to, kind of like say, well, this jam isn't as great as some of the other ones, like, go back, listen again. They're doing some interesting small things. It may not always be a major swing, but they're modulating everything right now, and it's wonderful.
For sure. And like you said, that arrow was just the perfect vehicle. Like the transition was flawless once again. The story of these shows so far. An interesting note on Cold Rain and Snow real quick is that Rick hopped on with Phil and Friends back in 2022, and they played Cold Rain and Snow, and Rick absolutely crushed it. I went back and listened to that just before this recording, and it was a really special moment. Obviously, you could tell how much Phil Lesh and the Dead mean to these guys. And then it just all culminated with that Broke Down Palace, which another bust out that we hadn't seen in a while, but not 10 years, but 2 years. And I think I was lying the other week when I said what my favorite Dead cover was, Ship of Fools, because this Broke Down Palace broke me. Super emotional. And Rick's voice is just perfect for this. Like, I don't think anyone covers this song better. So
Totally agree.
Incredible moment to be there. So moving. And this band had a hard assignment kind of picking things up after such an emotional time, but they go right into this Empress sandwich that we get to end the second set, and they did not disappoint.
They definitely did not. The Empress is not lacking whatsoever. It's a very, very good Empress, but I think what really hit all of us that were there in the moment is that right in the middle, out of nowhere, me and you are starting to hear like Rick like implying or teasing something else is coming, but we couldn't really quite make out what it was. And then holy shit, they just break into Moby before coming back into Empress. And I'll be completely honest, I just assumed that with my luck with concerts, I was never going to hear Moby live. So this was absolutely incredible for me. It was incredible for everyone there, in the middle of Empress too, no less. So it just kind of was the cherry on top to this evening.
I wish someone had gotten a picture in retrospect, because both you and I had our hands on our heads, like, what is happening when Moby started up? And then you like hugged me so hard, you almost knocked me over into our other buddy, Mike, who was on the other side of me. 2 mics. I was in a Mike sandwich. He basically tackled me, dude. And the crowd erupted, and it was just such a special moment. And it's kind of, I won't say a bummer because it was awesome getting Moby, but that Empress on its own was excellent. And then that's just like overshadowed by the fact Moby was played in the middle of it. But just a terrific way to end the set too. And the crowd pleasing claps and all of that with Empress is just perfect to kind of bring the energy back up from that super sad, emotional Phil Lesh tribute. But, we thought maybe that the energy was kind of done after that Empress, and the encore was insane. Let's just get into this tumble to start the encore. Who said you need a long tumble to be an excellent one? Because this was so killer. Like, I was shocked when I looked at the timestamps after the show was dropped at 13 minutes long, but they covered so much ground in this thing. Such like a cool, wah-heavy funk groove coming into the main portion of the jam. Peter, Rick, and Trev are just kind of going into this crazy space where it sounds a little bit like the Fox Arrow from Atlanta a little bit. And I looked over at you and was like, I think they might be trying to finish this Arrow that they never finished earlier in the set going into the Phil Lesh tribute. And no, they just decided we're going to go into this Axel F interpolation, which was a thing, several years ago, but they brought it back for this tumble, and the crowd lost their shit. So just an electric tumble. And I'm surprised they didn't extend it out all the way through the encore break, or through curfew. I mean, because I was looking at my watch when the jam started. I was like, oh, cool. We have 11, 12 minutes of tumble that we can jam out. No, they cut it off once they hit the peak of that energy. They were just like, you know what? We did everything we want to do with this. This was awesome. Let's just throw in a Love Light, like, audible. Let's add Love Light to the end of this set. Get the band and the crowd singing, and just awesome. Like bonus songs. I'll take it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm super sorry for squashing you. I was just, I don't know if you'll ever see me that excited again as when we got, my first Moby. So that I can only do so much. And I know that like right after that, because I definitely remember smacking the crap out of your shoulder saying, you spin me around, because I could hear the tease. So yeah, apparently I was just attacking my co-host left and right here at the end of this show, and I apologize for all of that, but it was a very exciting show to be at. But yeah, I totally agree. It's kind of cool getting tumble short and sweet. Like, let's just screw it, let's just keep the energy up. And that's how you do it when it's in the encore. And then to also, just like as a complete bonus, get Turn On Your Love Light, which you and me actually were fortunate enough to get in Charlottesville too. I just can't imagine going out on better vibes than this. And it's going to probably be a long while before either one of us sees a show better than this, like maybe at least till Goosemas.
Yeah, we maybe have like a week till we see a better show when you go to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, exactly.
But just an awesome night. Everyone in the crowd seemed so happy. Everyone we talked to on the walkout was so pumped, and such a special show to get after the reschedule for Asheville and the hurricane benefit efforts by the band for this. It was amazing to see that many people come together for a show on just a few weeks' notice, and it was a terrific time. But that leads into the second of the benefit shows in Birmingham, Alabama at the Avondale Brewing Company. We start off with Elizabeth in set 1, then Atlas Dogs into One In, One Out, into AUATC, Bon Iver cover. And then we get a run of Interlude 2 into Jive 1, into Jive Lee. And then a Turn Clouds and a Big Modern to close out set 1. And then set 2 opens up with a Drive, then Take On Me, Rockdale. Then we get a Creatures into Can't Get You Out of My Head by Kylie Minogue. And then a Slow Ready to close out set 2. And then we get a Thatch encore. So where do we want to start with the set 1, Mike?
Yeah, lots of cool stuff in set 1. Obviously, I've said before, I love the AUATC cover. I think that's their best one. The Interlude 2 in this one ruled. Not sure if you got a chance to spend any time with that, but it was a feisty Interlude 2. I loved that section. Jive 1 was great, but I think Jive Lee was even better. It went into a cool space, little bit trippy, a little bit spacey, but definitely Big Modern is my biggest regret for not going to this show. I know you and I talked about potentially driving down from Winston the next day. Just too much, I think, with families and stuff to make that happen. So when we were listening to it in real time, this Big Modern definitely jumped out at me. But what's new? Every Big Modern that pops up is absolutely incredible and does something that the last one didn't do. So Big Modern definitely for me is the it's not even just the set 1 highlight, it's the whole show highlight for me. So yeah, what do you think about set 1?
I gotta agree with you on Big Modern there, but again, another excellent show. Coming off of Winston-Salem, I saw some thoughts that maybe this wasn't as great of a show, but when I listen back, it's just terrific. Elizabeth, awesome way to start a show, obviously. Then we got Atlas Dogs for the first time in a while. It had been a 12-show gap, which is one of the longest in the song's history. Nice to see it pop back up, and the main portion of the song ended, and it sounded like they were going to jam it out, and there was like a few measures of transition, but it went right into One In, One Out, which was really cool. Great to hear that One In, One Out. They had been teasing it earlier, it sounded like, in the Nashville show, so I was kind of expecting it in Winston, but it popped up here. And then that goes into AUATC. Awesome cover, one of the best. Glad it's in the rotation kind of heavily this year compared to past years, and really hoping to catch that one. And then, like you mentioned, that Interlude 2 was different, and you kind of were hearing more hints of Jive 1 thrown in there than we're used to, but awesome stuff. And then Jive 1 was Jive 1, just a dance party, terrific. And this Jive Lee was really, really cool. This was the other highlight of the show for me, and outside of the Big Modern. A little more of like a subdued version, like more chill than we get from Jive Lee's usually. I think Rick played that Jive 1, that main riff, like 1.5 times before they were just like, fuck it, we're just playing something different now. And it went into this really cool, slow crescendo, full band jam for like 11 minutes. And one of my favorite parts was like Cotter's pushing the pace, and you just hear Jeff in the background more than you normally hear him, just ripping on the timbales here and there and pushing the crescendo further every time he does it. And yeah, just really nice to hear a more chill and less funk forward version of this, to see more of the space this band wants to explore with Jive Lee. So awesome. And then, yeah, you mentioned the Big Modern. You said a lot of what I wanted to say with that, but I think every version of Big Modern, you come out of it afterwards being like, that's the best version of this they played so far. That's the best version of this they played so far. And I think this is no exception. Really cool, different spaces explored. Interesting point. They kind of changed the way they transitioned at the end, going back into that main headbanging heavy metal kind of riff. I think it messed them up a little bit towards the end, but they just kind of skipped one of the portions where they kind of do these ascending riffs, and they just went right into that outro riff, and it was cool. Like, it's just cool to see them trying different things with this, and it all rips and it all sounds great. And you got to get the F-150 sounding commercial music when Rick has no sleeves on in Alabama.
Yeah, I couldn't agree any more than that. Built Rick tough. So
Biggest gun show in Alabama.
Clearly built Rick tough. But I thought it was cool because this Big Modern was actually super dancey. Like, it had some things in common with like some of the Creatures and some of the Pancakes we saw on the West Coast run. Not that it was like, identical or anything even close to that, but just a little bit more of a dancey Big Modern. And it's just awesome to see it continue to, what genre can Big Modern not cover? Because it seemingly can go any direction that they want it to at the given evening.
A really cool part about that dance party you mentioned too is like Rick and Cotter were kind of in sync, where Rick was doing this cool like double note thing where he was like almost kind of like a diddle on a drum, and Cotter was just kind of going back and forth with him, and it was just awesome. So loved it. It just completely different from what we've heard, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Keep taking chances with that song, and it's just going to keep improving. So moving into the set 2 here, lots to talk about. You've got a couple great covers, Drive, Rockdale Creatures. What do you like here, Alex? What stood out?
Everything was kind of shortened, I feel like, in this set compared to what we're used to with these songs. I really loved this Drive. It was like a full-on 2-guitar Goose situation where Rick and Peter were just having this excellent back and forth, where Peter had this cool scratchy sound on his guitar and Rick was just clean funk kind of stuff. And Trevor, of course, cranked up again, killing it per usual. They really wanted to get this Take On Me in there, though, in the second set. So they cut it a little bit short. I really like the space they were in, so a little bit of a bummer to have it cut a little bit, but terrific stuff. And then, yeah, I guess the other highlight would just be the covers, like you said. So if you want to get into some of that a little bit, happy to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Take On Me was very fun. It was also really cool to see them jam out a little bit on Can't Get You Out of My Head. Nothing like too crazy, but there's a little bit of sauce on that one. Actually, though, I thought that this Rockdale was very unique. Granted, like Rockdale's always heavy. It's always got, a big funk vibe, but it reminded me a bit of the Hunger Site in Winston-Salem, where there's part of me that's just going like, my God, the intensity of some of these peaks, like they're just absolutely bringing it. And there's just so much adrenaline on like the most energetic pieces of every concert, every show right now. I definitely give a lot of the props to Cotter for that, because he's definitely a big part of, the beefed up engine to this band that keeps things churning. But the peaks there were just insane, super spacey vibes in that Creatures too. And then I think Slow Ready Thatch could possibly be like my best outcome for the last 2 songs of a show at Goose. I'll have to think about it a little bit more, but that might actually be my ideal ending to a show. Really great set too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A killer set too. Even though they're more compact jams, they packed in a lot. You mentioned that Rockdale. There was some great moments in that jam. I think, like you mentioned, Cotter just at about halfway through it just decides to start going double time from what he was doing, and it just ratchets up the intensity through the finish line there. One thing to note: this Kylie Minogue Can't Get You Out of My Head. They jammed it a little different than normal, like you said, but it sounded like they were doing some like 2-chord back and forth on this jam that sounded a lot like Cold Rain and Snow to me. So it was interesting to hear that. So maybe that wasn't a little nod to Phil Lesh. I'm not sure, but listening back, I was like, oh yeah, that's sure enough. That sounds a lot like Cold Rain and Snow. So they didn't really jam that one out so much in Winston-Salem. So it's kind of cool to hear that. And it's just in my head because I was listening to the shows back to back to back, and I was like, that sounds like Cold Rain and Snow. And then of course, I go on Twitter to check to see if my opinion's right, and there's other people who said it, so I feel better about it. But yeah, really, really cool. Really, really cool to see that and hear that. And yeah, you mentioned Slow Ready, awesome dance party, and then Thatch encore. I mean, awesome. Unfortunate, it's a little bit shorter and doesn't explore as much as we get from a full Thatch, but they're trying to get that in so they can squeeze in another one later in the tour or something like that. They wanted to make sure they knocked out Thatch this weekend, I feel like. So it just an electric way to close the set. And If wish we had 5 more minutes to kind of get the thatch that they deserved in Alabama, but still awesome.
Yeah, I think there's a strong possibility they'll see it in St. Augustine over this coming weekend, but we'll see how that shakes out as far as the sets go.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like why pick Thatch unless they really wanted to highlight it at another stop on this tour and they wanted to make sure that they didn't have too long of a gap or something. But who knows?
Makes perfect sense to me. We'll see how it goes.
But overall, awesome weekend. Anyone who got to all 3 of these shows, like, damn, you had a great time. We were lucky enough to go to 1, but not a bad show in the mix. And the band's exploring so much territory, even in these smaller, shorter jams. Like, can't beat that.
No, there's lots of new stuff every show, even the stuff that you may be like quick to discount because it's, a shorter song or it's a song that doesn't get jammed out. Like I would definitely highly encourage everyone to start like getting in the practice of listening to everything, because with the streak that they're on right now, I'm not like exaggerating or blowing smoke when I say that everything truly is worth listening to right now, because there's new things happening every night. And I know I speak for both of us when I say I can't wait to see where this week of tour goes and recap it all next weekend with you.
Really excited to see where this tour goes. Really excited for everyone having the opportunity to go to a show. If you have any thoughts on the shows, we would always love to hear from you. So send us an email, slowreadypod@gmail.com, or message us on any of our socials at slowreadypod. And we'd love to get any feedback and highlight that on the show. So let us know what you think.
Yeah, or just tell us how we're wrong. Either way.
We get plenty of that. So love to hear that too. All right. So like we said, just be sure to check in with us at Slow Ready Pod on all the socials. If you want to reach out to us, we'd love to hear from you, and can't wait for the next episode. To anyone going to a show, have a great time, and we'll be back with you next time on the Slow Ready Pod. Take care.
See ya.